What's the most expensive word in the world? For billionaire CEO Alistair Vance, that word was stupid. Spat at a humble waitress in a 5-star restaurant, that single insult set off a chain reaction that vaporized a $3 billion empire before the dinner plates were even cleared. You think you know stories about karma. You have no idea. This isn't just a story about a waitress getting revenge. It's the story of how a woman with nothing brought down a man who had everything, all because he couldn't see the genius hiding behind the apron. The scent of rosemary, old wine, and expensive perfume was the smell of Evelyn Hayes's life. It clung to her hair, her cheap uniform, and the worn-out sneakers she wore instead of the regulation heels her manager, Matthew, conveniently ignored. L'Étoile d'Or wasn't just a restaurant, it was a theatre. Located on the 65th floor overlooking Central Park, it was a stage where New York's elite performed their lives. They laughed too loudly, gestured with watches that cost more than her apartment, more than her mother's life-saving treatment, and they ate food they barely looked at. Evelyn was just part of the scenery. And she was a very good part of the scenery. She was 28, but the stress of the last 2 years made her feel 40. Her apron, starched and white at 4:00 p.m., was already damp. In her pocket, her phone vibrated with a text she didn't need to read. It was the hospital. Camilla Hayes, update. Focus, Evelyn. She wasn't just Evelyn Hayes, waitress. In another life, a life she'd buried 6 feet under a mountain of debt and non-disclosure agreements, she was Dr. Elena Hayes, computational linguist. A prodigy who had developed a predictive language model so advanced, her former boss at Cyber.io had stolen it, patented it, and blacklisted her from the industry. She had fought back, but his lawyers were sharks, and she was at the time just a graduate student. They'd ruined her. So, Evelyn Hayes, waitress, it was. She served $500 bottles of Chateau Margaux to men who discussed the very technology she had invented, blissfully unaware that the woman pouring their wine knew more than all of them combined. "Table 7, Evelyn! On the move!" Matthew hissed, pushing the swinging door open for her. "On it," she whispered, balancing 3 plates that weighed a combined 20 pounds on one arm. Her station was the quiet corner, usually reserved for awkward first dates or somber business meetings. But tonight it was different. Chloe, a fellow waitress with blonde hair and a gaze as sharp and cold as a shard of glass, sauntered over. "Guess what?" Chloe smirked, polishing a glass as if it were a weapon. "Matthew just gave me the VIP section." Evelyn just nodded, her eyes on the reservation tablet. "That's great, Chloe." "It is, isn't it? Alistair Vance is coming in." "The Alistair Vance." Chloe's eyes glittered. "He's closing a deal tonight. They say his guest is Kenji Tanaka. You know, from Tanaka Global Horizons? The deal is rumored to be worth billions." Evelyn knew the names. Vance Hyperion Dynamics was the new, brutal face of aggressive tech expansion. Tanaka Global was old-moneyed, traditional, and powerful. "I hope the tip is good," Evelyn said, her voice flat. Chloe scoffed. "Oh, honey, this isn't about a tip. This is about access. A man like Alistair Vance could change your life." She looked Evelyn up and down, her lip curling at the worn sneakers. "Or, you know, mine." Evelyn just wanted to get through the night. Her mother's new experimental treatment wasn't covered by insurance. The down payment was $50,000. Her current bank balance was $432, $18. Every 20% tip was a drop in a desolate ocean. "Have fun with that," Evelyn said, grabbing a water pitcher. As she moved through the dining room, she felt the familiar anxiety creeping up her throat. It wasn't just the stress of the bills. It was the crushing, suffocating weight of her own potential, rotting on the vine. While she was here, her stolen code was running algorithms for stock market prediction, military logistics, and God knows what else. She'd once given a keynote speech in Berlin. Tonight she was praying that the man at table 9 wouldn't complain that his steak was medium rare instead of medium. "Evelyn?" Matthew grabbed her arm, his face pale and sweaty. "Change of plans. Chloe's indisposed." Evelyn glanced at the bar. Chloe was laughing, but her face was bright red. "She's been sampling the display wine again, hasn't she?" "She's a liability," Matthew snapped, a rare flash of anger in his eyes. "The Vance party is here. They're in the private room. The private room. The Sapphire. You're up. Do not mess this up, Evelyn. They're the only reservation tonight that matters." Evelyn's stomach turned to ice. The Sapphire room. The one with the $100,000 crystal chandelier. The one with the private elevator. "Me? Matthew, you know You're the only one I trust," he said, his voice softening. "You're the best I've got, Evelyn. You're smart, you're quiet. Just be a ghost. A polite, efficient ghost, okay?" Evelyn nodded, her mind already shifting. She wasn't Dr. Elena Hayes. She wasn't Evelyn, the worried daughter. She was a ghost. She straightened her apron, grabbed the chilled silver tray, and walked toward the heavy oak doors of the Sapphire room, completely unaware that she was walking toward the end of her life and the beginning of a war. The Sapphire room was less a room and more a bubble of pure, terrifying silence. The carpet was so thick it felt like walking on moss. The walls were not walls, but floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a 180-degree view of Manhattan's glittering skyline. It was designed to make the occupants feel like gods, looking down on the ants below, and the gods were already seated. At the head of the long, polished mahogany table sat Alistair Vance. He was exactly as the magazines portrayed him, sharp, cold, and flawless. His suit was a custom-tailored Tom Ford, his hair a sculpted wave of dark brown, and his eyes the color of a frozen lake. He wore a Patek Philippe Calatrava, a watch Evelyn recognized from a pawn shop window, where a similar one had been priced at $50,000. He radiated a static energy, an impatience that made the air around him feel thin. To his right, his entourage, 2 younger, shark-eyed men in identical suits, whispering to each other and avoiding eye contact with their boss. To his left, the prize, Mr. Kenji Tanaka. If Vance was a blizzard, Tanaka was a mountain. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a beautifully simple dark suit and a plain tie. His hair was a perfect silver, and his face was calm, observant, and impossible to read. He sat with perfect posture, his hands folded on the table. Beside him sat his own assistant, a woman who watched everything. Evelyn slipped into the room, her movements practiced and silent. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice a low, professional murmur. "May I offer you still or sparkling water?" Alistair Vance didn't even look at her. He waved a hand dismissively. "Sparkling. And we're ordering now. We don't have time for this." "Alistair-san," Mr. Tanaka said, his voice surprisingly gentle but laced with authority. "Let the young woman do her job. The view is lovely. We are not in a hurry." Vance clenched his jaw, but forced a smile that looked more like a snarl. "Of course, Kenji. My apologies. I'm just so eager to finalize our partnership." "Eagerness can be a virtue," Mr. Tanaka replied, his eyes following Evelyn as she poured the water. "But patience is the soil from which empires grow." Evelyn placed the water down. "The specials tonight, sir, are a pan-seared." "We'll have the wine list," Vance cut her off, his eyes flashing with irritation. "The real list." Evelyn nodded. "Of course, sir." She retrieved the heavy, leather-bound tome reserved for the Sapphire Room. This list didn't have prices. It was assumed that if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Vance snatched it from her hand. He didn't read it. He just pointed to a name. A 1982 Chateau Margaux, 2 bottles, and bring the pre-appetizers. Now. Evelyn's blood ran cold. The 82 Margaux. That was the bottle Matthew kept in the temperature-locked vault. It was $19,000 per bottle. An excellent choice, sir, she managed. As she turned to leave, she heard Chloe's voice from the main dining room, just outside the door. "Oh, Evelyn, Matthew needs you to polish the silver. I'll take the wine order down to the cellar for you." Evelyn froze. This was a classic Chloe move. A power play. If Evelyn let her take the order, Chloe would take credit for it. If she refused, she'd be not a team player. "That's all right, Chloe," Evelyn said, her voice still a whisper. "I have it." No, I insist," Chloe chirped, trying to shoulder her way into the room, desperate to be seen by Alistair Vance. "Chloe, no." It was too late. Chloe, in her new, unbroken-in high heels, stumbled on the thick carpet's edge. Her arm, reaching for the order tablet in Evelyn's hand, instead slammed into Evelyn's side. The collision was tragically, comically slow. Evelyn, a master of balance, tried to compensate. She shifted her weight, but Chloe was falling into her. The silver tray she was still carrying, now loaded with the water glasses she'd been clearing, went flying, and a full glass of ice water arced gracefully through the air, landing not on the $5,000 suit, but on something infinitely more valuable. It splashed directly onto a stack of thick, blue-bound documents sitting in front of Alistair Vance. The $3 billion deal. The ink on the signed letter of intent, the only copy they'd brought, began to bleed instantly. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of water onto the $1,000-a-yard carpet. Time itself seemed to curdle. Evelyn watched, horrified, as the meticulous Japanese characters on Mr. Tanaka's side of the page blurred into an ugly, inky mess. Alistair Vance's signature, written with a thick, arrogant pen, dissolved into a blue smear. Chloe had already vanished, scurrying back into the main dining room like a frightened mouse. Evelyn was alone, standing in the center of the storm. Alistair Vance looked at the ruined documents. He looked at the spreading pool of water. He looked at his hand, now wet from trying to shield the pages. He didn't yell. Not at first. He simply vibrated. He rose from his chair, a slow, terrible unfurling of his 6'3" frame. He was a predator, and his prey had just ruined the hunt. Mr. Tanaka watched him, not the documents. He watched Alistair Vance. "Do you?" Vance began, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Evelyn found her voice, or a cracked, reedy version of it. "Sir, I am profoundly sorry. It was an accident. My co-worker." "I don't care about your co-worker," Vance roared, and the sound barrier broke. The civility of the room shattered. The glass walls seemed to rattle. "I care about my deal. This document. This is the only signed copy. We were meant to be celebrating." "Alistair-san, please," Mr. Tanaka said, his voice calm. "It is only paper. We can have it redrawn in the morning." "It's not just paper." Vance spun on him, his fury now redirected. "It's the principle. It's the incompetence. This is l'Étoile d'Or. This is supposed to be the best. And they send in this child." He turned back to Evelyn, his face now inches from hers. She could smell the expensive cologne and the faint, acidic scent of his anger. She didn't back down. She stood her ground, though her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break a rib. "Sir, I assure you, I can get towels. We can try to dry it?" He laughed, a short barking sound devoid of humor. Dry a $3 billion contract. With a napkin? He stalked over to the ruined documents, picked up the top page and held it up. The water dripped from it, splattering on his Patek Philippe. This, he hissed, is a culmination of 6 months of work. 6 months of negotiations, of travel, of navigating a culture I barely understand. He shot a pointed, angry look at Mr. Tanaka, who registered it with a blank face. And it's all ruined. By you! He jabbed a finger at her chest, not quite touching her, but the threat was there. Do you even know what billion means? He spat. Of course you don't. You're a waitress. You probably make... what? 30,000 a year if you're lucky? You're here to carry trays and smile, and you can't even do that right. Sir, that is enough, Evelyn said, her voice dropping, the fear being replaced by a cold, familiar anger. Oh, is it enough? Am I offending you? Good. He was enjoying this. He was performing for Mr. Tanaka, trying to regain control by asserting his dominance over the smallest person in the room. You're an embarrassment. You're a footnote. You're a rounding error in my life. You are, without a doubt, the most stupid girl I have ever had the misfortune of laying eyes on. There it was. The word. Stupid. It hung in the air, heavy and toxic. It was a word Evelyn hadn't heard directed at her since she was a child. It was the word her rivals at MIT had wished she was. The room was silent again, but this time the silence was different. It wasn't shock. It was a vacuum. Evelyn Hayes, the waitress, looked at Alistair Vance, the billionaire. She didn't cry. She didn't flush. She didn't run. Her eyes hardened. The waitress mask dissolved, and for a split second, Alistair Vance was looking into the eyes of Dr. Elena Hayes. And then Mr. Tanaka spoke. Vance-san. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a katana. Alistair Vance, high on his own rage, clearly didn't register the warning tone in Mr. Tanaka's voice. One moment, Kenji, Vance snapped, still glaring at Evelyn. I'm not finished with this thing. No, Mr. Tanaka said. He stood up. He was not a tall man, but at that moment he seemed to tower over everyone. You are quite finished? Vance finally turned, confused. What? Mr. Tanaka did not look at Alistair Vance. He looked at Evelyn. His face, previously unreadable, was now a mask of profound disappointment and a strange, calculating interest. He bowed, not a shallow nod, but a deep, respectful bow, from his waist to a waitress. Gomen nasai, he said to her, his voice clear. I apologize for my associates' behavior. It is inexcusable. Evelyn, stunned, could only nod. Vance watched this, his jaw dropping. Kenji, what are you doing? She's the one who should be apologizing. She's the help. Mr. Tanaka straightened, and finally, he turned his full, icy attention to Alistair Vance. The help, Tanaka repeated, tasting the word. She is a person, a woman who is doing her job, a job which you, in your eagerness, have made impossible. I made impossible? She spilled. An accident, Tanaka cut him off. An accident, which you have turned into a shibai, a vulgar piece of theatre. You have shown me your true character, Vance-san, and it is lacking. Now hold on, Vance said, his face paling, the realization of his mistake finally dawning. Kenji, it's just the stress. The deal? The deal, Mr. Tanaka said, nodding. Yes. Let us speak of the deal. He walked over to the ruined documents. He looked at the blurred ink. This, he said, is a symbol. It is a partnership between Tanaka Global and Vance Hyperion. A partnership requires sonke, respect. It requires duet, harmony. He picked up a clean napkin, not to dry the page, but to wipe his own fingers, as if touching the table had contaminated him. "You," he said, pointing the napkin at Vance, "have no respect. You berate a person you see as beneath you. You use power not to build, but to crush. What would you do, I wonder, if one of my junior executives made a mistake? Would you scream at him? Would you call him stupid in front of his peers?" "Of course not," Vance sputtered. "That's different." "How?" Tanaka asked, his voice genuinely curious. "How is it different? Because he wears a suit and she wears an apron? Because you pay him and you simply tolerate her?" He looked back at Evelyn. "This young woman," he said, "has shown more dignity in the last 5 minutes than you have in the last 5 months of negotiation." Evelyn's mind was racing. This was it. The moment. She could stay silent. She could be the dignified waitress. Or she took a small step forward. Her voice was quiet, but it was not the voice of a waitress. It was the voice of a scientist. "He's also wrong, Mr. Tanaka," she said. Both men turned to look at her, shocked. "Wrong?" Vance scoffed. "Wrong about what, you idiot? About you being stupid?" Evelyn ignored him, her eyes locked on Mr. Tanaka. "He's wrong about his own deal. I overheard him in the elevator. He's planning to use your logistics network to piggyback his new, untested AI heuristic, the one he calls Project Juggernaut." Vance's blood turned to ice. "I'm a waitress, sir," Evelyn said, a tiny, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "I hear a lot of things. And I also read. Project Juggernaut's foundational code is based on the Odyssey platform. And I know for a fact that platform is fundamentally flawed. It can't handle the data load of a global logistics network. It will collapse within 90 days. Vance was white as a sheet. How could you possibly know that?" "Because," Evelyn said, her voice ringing with the clarity of absolute truth, "I'm the one who wrote it. And I'm the one who told my old boss, David Robitaille, that it was a failure right before he stole it, renamed it, and sold it to you." The silence in the room was now absolute. Even the city lights outside seemed to dim. Mr. Tanaka looked from Evelyn's face, now burning with a fierce, cold intelligence, to Alistair Vance's, which was crumbling into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. "Is this true, Vance-san?" Tanaka asked, his voice deadly soft. "Are you selling me a broken horse?" Vance couldn't speak. He just gaped, exposed. Mr. Tanaka nodded slowly. He turned back to Evelyn. "And what is your name, young woman?" "Evelyn, sir." "Evelyn Hayes." "Well, Ms. Hayes," Mr. Tanaka said, "you have just saved my company $3 billion. He looked back at Vance, who was now leaning on the table, his hand over his mouth. "Vance-san!" Tanaka's voice cracked like a whip, a parade ground command. Alistair flinched. "Our negotiations are over. The deal is off. You will not be hearing from Tanaka Global Horizons again. You will, however, be hearing from my lawyers. I believe the term you used was fraud." Mr. Tanaka's assistant, who had been silent this entire time, snapped a laptop shut, stood and opened the door for him. He walked out of the room. He did not look back. Alistair Vance sank into his chair. His two shark-eyed assistants were already on their phones, likely shorting their own company's stock. The 3B deal was gone. Alistair Vance, the billionaire CEO, looked up at Evelyn, the waitress. His face was a ruin of hatred, fear, and disbelief. "You," he whispered. "You did this." Evelyn just looked at him, her hands, surprisingly, perfectly steady. "No, sir," she said, her voice back to its professional, quiet murmur. "You did." She turned, picked up the silver tray, and walked out of the room, leaving the most powerful man in New York to drown in the silence. The main dining room was abuzz. The sound of Mr. Tanaka's public execution of Alistair Vance had travelled through the thick oak doors. Chloe was hiding by the kitchen, her face a picture of terror. Matthew was standing by the hostess station, wringing his hands. When Evelyn walked out, a hush fell. She walked straight to Matthew. "He's in the sapphire room. He's not happy." "Evelyn," Matthew began, his voice pained. What happened?" Before she could answer, Alistair Vance stormed out of the private room. He wasn't the cold, controlled man from the magazines. He was a wild animal. His tie was loose, his jacket unbuttoned. "You!" he bellowed, pointing a shaking finger at Evelyn. The entire restaurant, the hedge fund managers, the society wives, the celebrities, all turned to look. "You're fired!" he screamed. Evelyn just blinked. "Sir, you don't talk back to me," he snapped. He stalked over to Matthew. "You, manager, I want her fired. I want her gone. If she is still here when I count to 3, I will buy this restaurant. I will buy this building. And I will turn it into a parking lot. 1. Matthew, caught between a rock and a corporate takeover, looked at Evelyn with desperate, pleading eyes. "I'm sorry," his look said. "Evelyn," he said, his voice cracking, Go get your things." Chloe let out a small, horrified gasp. She had wanted Evelyn in trouble, but she hadn't wanted this. Evelyn felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. She had just cost this man $3 billion. Getting fired was a small price to pay. "Fine," she said. She untied her apron, the one stained with the smell of rosemary and old wine, and folded it neatly. She placed it on the hostess stand. 2, Vance roared. "I'm going," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. She looked at Alistair Vance, his face purple with rage. "You know, Mr. Vance," she said, "for a man who just lost a 3B deal because he was committing technological fraud, you seem remarkably focused on the Waitress." Vance's face went from purple to white. He had no response. He had just been outed in front of the most influential room in New York. Evelyn turned and walked toward the staff locker room. The entire room watched her go. She kept her back straight, her head held high. She didn't run. She grabbed her thin jacket from her locker, her worn-out backpack, and her phone. She walked out the service exit and into the cold November alley. The sound of the city hit her. Sirens, traffic, the smell of street food and exhaust. It was a harsh contrast to the hushed, perfumed air of L'Etoile d'Or. She was unemployed. She checked her phone. $432.18, and 3 missed messages from the hospital. She leaned against the brick wall, the adrenaline finally fading, leaving her knees weak. She pressed the callback button. "St. Jude's Oncology," a tired voice answered. "Hi, this is Evelyn Hayes. I'm calling about my mother, Camilla Hayes." "Ah, yes, Miss Hayes. We've been trying to reach you. Dr. Petrov wanted to speak with you tonight." "Is she okay? Is something wrong?" Evelyn's voice was sharp with a new, more potent fear. "Ms. Hayes, your mother had a difficult reaction to the last chemo round. Her white blood cell count has dropped to a critical level. We need to move her to the specialized sterile wing." "Okay," Evelyn said, her hand gripping the phone. "Okay, do it. Whatever it takes." "That's the issue, Miss Hayes. The sterile wing. It's part of the new experimental treatment protocol. We can't move her without the initial co-payment. We've run your insurance. It's been declined." "Declined? I paid it last month." "Yes, but your grace period from your previous employment's COBRA policy, it expired. Midnight last night. We're so sorry. Without the payment, we can't..." Evelyn's vision tunneled. "The $50,000. It wasn't just a down payment. It was a ransom. How long do I have?" she whispered, sliding down the brick wall until she was sitting on the damp pavement. Dr. Petrov said, "He needs to make the decision by morning, 8:01 a.m. After that, we'll have to move her to the standard care wing and, frankly, Miss Hayes, she's too compromised. We need the $50,000 by 8:12 a.m. Evelyn hung up. She had just saved a man $3 billion. She had just destroyed another man's $3 billion deal. She had delivered a speech that would be repeated in New York high society for months, and she was sitting in an alley, unemployed, about to lose her mother because she couldn't get $50,000. The irony was so bitter, she laughed. It was a raw, broken sound in the cold night air. She was brilliant. She was a genius, and she had never felt more stupid in her entire life. She put her head in her hands. The fight was over. She was done. A shadow fell over her. "Excuse me, Miss Hayes." Evelyn looked up, her eyes blurred. A woman in a sharp, dark suit, Mr. Tanaka's assistant, was standing over her. Behind her, a long black car purred at the curb. It was a Lexus, but it looked as official as a tank. "Mr. Tanaka," the assistant said, her voice polite but firm. "Would like a word." The interior of the Lexus was like the Sapphire Room, silent, expensive, and smelling faintly of leather and green tea. Evelyn sat on the plush seat, feeling 1,000,000 miles away from the alley grime. She was acutely aware of the tear in the knee of her cheap black pants. The assistant, whose name was apparently Aiko, had not spoken a word. She just typed silently on a laptop. Evelyn was driven not to a hotel, but to a towering, anonymous glass building in the financial district. "Mr. Tanaka is waiting," Aiko said, holding a door open to a private elevator. They ascended in silence. When the doors opened, Evelyn was not in an office, but a penthouse apartment. It was a study in Japanese minimalism. Tatami mats, simple shoji screens, and one vast window overlooking the Statue of Liberty. Kenji Tanaka was sitting on a simple cushion, wearing a yukata, a simple robe. He was sipping tea. "Ms. Hayes," he said, "please, sit. Would you like some tea?" Evelyn was too dazed to refuse. She sat on the cushion opposite him, her legs tucked awkwardly. Aiko poured her a cup of pale green tea. It smelled like toasted rice. "You have had," Mr. Tanaka said, "a very difficult evening." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "You could say that. You were fired. In a most un-American fashion. I find public displays of humiliation to be inefficient." "He was angry," Evelyn said, her voice hollow. "He was exposed," Tanaka corrected her. "You did not just spill water on his deal, Miss Hayes. You set fire to it, and you did it with the truth. That is a rare and dangerous combination." He took a sip of tea. "Tell me about Odyssey." And so she did. For the first time in 2 years, Dr. Elena Hayes returned. Evelyn spoke for 10 minutes. She didn't use emotional words. She spoke of code, of foundational logic, of recursive errors in the predictive modeling. She explained how the juggernaut heuristic, which Vance was selling as a self-correcting AI, was in fact a dumb system that would only amplify errors in a network as large as Tanaka's, leading to a catastrophic logistics failure within 3 months. Tanaka listened. He didn't interrupt. He just watched her, his ancient eyes absorbing everything. When she was finished, he set his cup down. "I see," he said. "You are not a waitress." "I am, sir," Evelyn said, the fight draining out of her again. "Or I was. I'm just a person, with a lot of debt, and a very sick mother." Tanaka nodded. "Camilla Hayes, St. Jude's Oncology. Dr. Petrov. She needs the experimental treatment. The payment is $50,000. It is due by 8 a.m., or she will be moved from the sterile wing." Evelyn stared at him, her blood turning to ice water for the second time that night. How do you know that? My assistant, Aiko, is not just a note-taker, Tanaka said with a thin smile. You are a very interesting person, Miss Hayes. My company is built on information. While you were detailing the flaws in Vance's AI, Aiko was doing a background check. You, Dr. Elena Hayes, are a ghost. You sued Cyber.io. You lost. You disappeared. And now you have reappeared, serving Kobe beef to your nemesis. He leaned forward. This is a most fascinating story. It's my life, Evelyn whispered, a hot tear of frustration and fear finally rolling down her cheek. And it's about to fall apart. By 8 a.m. By 8 a.m., Tanaka interrupted. Your mother's bill will be paid. Evelyn's head snapped up. What? I am a businessman, Ms. Hayes. I do not believe in karma. I believe in on and giri, obligation and duty. You saved me $3 billion. I find myself in your debt. A debt of $50,000 seems a very small price to pay. I can't accept that, Evelyn stammered. That's charity. No, Tanaka said, his voice firm. It is not charity. It is a retainer. A retainer? For what? Mr. Tanaka smiled. Alistair Vance is a shark. He is wounded, and a wounded shark is the most dangerous kind. He will not be ruined by the loss of my deal. He will be ruined by the reason for the loss. Fraud, using stolen, broken code. He will come after you, Miss Hayes, Tanaka continued. He will blame you. He will try to silence you. He will say you are a disgruntled, stupid waitress who made up a story to get back at him for being fired. But I can prove it, Evelyn said. The code, it has my digital signature, my Easter egg, hidden in the source. Exactly, Tanaka said, and you will. But not as a waitress. You will do it as the new head of AI diagnostics for Tanaka Global Horizons. Evelyn's jaw dropped. What? You're offering me a job? A salary, 6 figures, full premium medical coverage for you and your mother, effective immediately. And a new apartment, here, in this building, far away from Alistair Vance's reach. This is not charity, Dr. Hayes. This is an investment. But why? Because, Tanaka said, I have a new problem. Vance Hyperion Dynamics is about to collapse. It will create a power vacuum. I need someone who understands that technology to help me pick up the pieces. And more importantly, I detest bullies. You, Dr. Hayes, are a lion. You have just been reminded of that. I am simply opening the cage door. Aiko slid a tablet across the table. It was a contract. Evelyn looked at the salary. It was more than she'd ever dreamed. She looked at the medical plan details. It was the best in the world. She thought of her mother. She thought of the 8 a.m. deadline. She picked up the stylus. Where do I sign? One more thing, Tanaka said. Aiko has just transferred the $50,000 to St. Jude's. Your mother is safe. Evelyn signed the contract, her hand shaking, not from fear, but from a new, terrifying, and wonderful power. The ink was barely dry when Aiko's phone buzzed. Aiko looked at it, and a rare, small smile touched her lips. She turned the screen to Mr. Tanaka. It was a news alert. Stock plummets. Vance Hyperion Dynamics, VHD, in freefall after 3B Tanaka deal collapses. It begins, Mr. Tanaka said. The next 6 months were a blur. For Evelyn, or Dr. Elena Hayes, as she was now known to the world, it was like breathing after being underwater for 2 years. Mr. Tanaka was true to his word. Camilla Hayes was moved to a private suite at St. Jude's, and then, when she was stable, flown on a private medical jet to the top cancer clinic in Tokyo, all expenses paid. Evelyn, working from a new, sterile white office in Tanaka's New York building, began her war. She didn't fight with anger. She fought with facts. Her first act as head of AI diagnostics was to author a white paper. It was a brutal, elegant, 50-page evisceration of Project Juggernaut. She didn't name Vance. She didn't have to. She just published the core of the Odyssey code, complete with her original Easter egg. A hidden signature that read, "EH was here, and she told you this wouldn't work." She posted it on a public server. It was a tactical nuke. Within 48 hours, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and every tech blog in the world was running the story. The genius behind Juggernaut, how tech's hottest AI is a stolen, broken mess. Alistair Vance's world imploded. The stock, which had been in freefall, hit zero. It was delisted from the NASDAQ. His board of directors, the shark-eyed men from the restaurant, all resigned. They were the first to file lawsuits. Class action lawsuit filed against Vance Hyperion for gross misrepresentation of core assets. SEC launches formal investigation into Alistair Vance for securities fraud. Vance was trapped. He was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid. He knew who had fired the shot. He knew it was the waitress. He tried to fight back. He gave an interview on a desperate second-rate news channel. "She's a disgruntled employee," he raged, his $5,000 suit wrinkled, his face puffy. She was a waitress. She has no idea what she's talking about. She's stupid." The interviewer just blinked. "Mr. Vance, Dr. Elena Hayes is a PhD from MIT, a keynote speaker at the Berlin Symposium, and she has the source code. Do you?" Vance stormed off the set. His assets were frozen. His Patek Philippe was sold at auction. His penthouse was seized by the bank. Evelyn watched all of this from her new life. She worked 18-hour days, not serving wine, but building Tanaka's new AI division from the ground up. She built a real predictive model, one based on WA, Harmony, designed not to exploit markets, but to predict catastrophic events, famines, tsunamis, market crashes, and get aid there before it happened. Mr. Tanaka called it Project Camilla, in honor of her mother. Camilla, by the way, was in remission. The Tokyo clinic had worked wonders. She was living in a beautiful apartment in Kyoto, learning ikebana, flower arranging, and bossing around her new team of nurses. Evelyn visited her, and for the first time in years, they sat together, not in a drafty hospital room, but on a balcony overlooking a peaceful temple garden. "You did all this, Elena," her mother said, her hair still thin, but her eyes bright. "You're a warrior." "I just got angry," Evelyn said. "Good," Camilla smiled. "It's about time." Evelyn's new life was almost perfect, but there was one loose end, one final piece of the puzzle. She had brought down the empire. Now she had to face the man. The New York AI and Tech Symposium invited her to be the keynote speaker. It was the same event where, 3 years prior, Alistair Vance had been the star. She accepted. The New York AI and Tech Symposium was the new Colosseum. The keynote speech was the main event, and the titans of the industry, the CEOs of Google, the VPs from OpenAI, the venture capitalists who could make or break a company with a single check, were all in attendance. The air hummed with a low-grade static of ambition, whispered deals, and the scent of new money. Backstage, Evelyn Hayes, Dr. Elena Hayes to the world, was not the woman who had once trembled in a restaurant alley. She adjusted the microphone pinned to the lapel of her custom-tailored, deep blue Armani suit. It was a suit that cost more than her entire wardrobe from her old life. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the perfect fit. She wasn't nervous. Not about the speech. She had given keynotes before, long ago. This was different. This was a coronation. In the past 6 months, her life had been a compressed blur of impossible progress. Project Camilla, the ethical AI she had built for Tanaka Global, was already running simulations for the World Health Organization, predicting famine in East Africa 6 months out, allowing aid to be rerouted before the crisis hit. It was the work she had always dreamed of. Her mother was the project's namesake and its biggest fan. Camilla Hayes was not just in remission. She was thriving in Kyoto, sending Evelyn blurry photos of temples and meticulously arranged flowers. A video call from last week replayed in Evelyn's mind. Her mother, her face fuller, her eyes bright, holding up a lopsided piece of pottery. They say the imperfection is what makes it beautiful, Eleanor. Remember that. A stagehand gestured. 5 minutes, Dr. Hayes. Evelyn nodded, taking a sip of water. In the front row, she knew Mr. Tanaka was waiting. He had become more than a boss. He was a sensei, a mentor who, with a few quiet words, had rebuilt her confidence as surely as she had rebuilt his AI division. And now, the MC's voice boomed, a woman who needs no introduction, though her story is the stuff of legend, the architect of Tanaka Global's Project Camilla, and the mind that redefined ethical AI. Please welcome Dr. Elena Hayes. Evelyn walked out onto the stage. The light was blinding, but she found Mr. Tanaka's face in the front row. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. She began. "We are taught," she said, her voice clear and strong, filling the 500-seat auditorium, that disruption is our highest goal. To disrupt markets, to disrupt labor, to disrupt the status quo. We are a room full of disruptors. But what are we leaving in our wake? Her presentation was titled, Ethical AI, Building a Future That Doesn't Cheat. It was a masterpiece of code and conscience. She showed them how predictive AI, in the wrong hands, simply reinforced old biases. She showed them the Odyssey Code, her own stolen work, and put it side by side with Project Camilla. One, she said, pointing to the Juggernaut Code, is designed to exploit a pattern. The other, pointing to Camilla, is designed to understand it. One is theft. The other is progress. The code, it's just a mirror. It shows who we are. She was in the flow, her passion and intellect a tangible force in the room. And that's when she saw him. A commotion at the back, a side door used by the press corps, a figure slipping in, a man who didn't belong. Her voice faltered for a microsecond, a single skipped beat. He was gaunt. The sharp, custom-tailored suits were gone, replaced by a cheap, wrinkled blazer that hung off his shoulders. His hair, once perfectly sculpted, was thin and greasy. He clutched a press pass that said, Tech Rebooted, a defunct blog. It was Alistair Vance. Their eyes met across the vast, darkened room. He looked hollowed out, a black hole of a man, stripped of his gravity. He was a ghost, haunting his own kingdom. Evelyn felt a jolt, not of fear, but of a cold, final pity. She had expected him. She had, in some way, been waiting. She turned back to her presentation, her voice finding a new, harder edge. We must hold ourselves accountable, because if we don't, I assure you, the world will. She finished to a thunderous, standing ovation. The MC returned to the podium, breathless. Dr. Hayes has agreed to take a few questions. We have microphones in the aisles. Please state your name and publication. The first question was from the Wall Street Journal, a technical query about data sourcing. Evelyn answered it flawlessly. The second was from Wired, about the future of Project Camilla. Dr. Hayes, your rise has been meteoric. What's next? Growth, Evelyn said simply. We've proven the concept. Now we scale. We want to put Project Camilla in the hands of every NGO that needs it, for free. Technology that isn't helping humanity is just a toy. More applause. And then a new voice, a voice that was no longer a confident bellow, but a reedy, desperate shriek. Alistair Vance, tech rebooted. The room went silent. The cameras, which had been respectfully filming Evelyn, all swiveled at once. The sound of 100 shutters clicking was like a plague of locusts. Vance was standing in the aisle, gripping the microphone stand so hard his knuckles were white. He was shaking, a vibrating antenna of pure, pathetic rage. A question for Dr. Hayes. He spat the title like it was poison. You stand on stage and you talk about ethics. You talk about accountability. But isn't it true you're a fraud? Isn't it true you stole your position? The crowd gasped. This was not a question. This was a public execution. Isn't it true, Vance continued, his voice cracking, that you're a glorified waitress who used a simple accident to lie your way into Mr. Tanaka's bed? That you're a corporate spy who seduced your way to the top? A wave of disgust rippled through the auditorium. Mr. Tanaka's face remained utterly impassive. You destroyed my life, Vance screamed, his rant now completely unhinged from the question. You stupid little girl. You took everything from me. You're a thief and a... He couldn't even finish. He was just breathing heavily, his eyes wild, foam gathering at the corner of his mouth. The MC was horrified. Sir, security. Evelyn held up a single, steady hand. No, it's all right. Let him. She waited. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by Vance's ragged breathing and the whir of cameras. Evelyn let the silence stretch, letting his pathetic accusations hang in the air and rot. Then she walked away from the podium, closer to the edge of the stage, a lioness calmly observing her prey. Thank you for that question, Mr. Vance, she said. Her voice was calm, amplified by the microphone, utterly in control. It's good to see you again. I wasn't sure you'd be here. I wasn't sure you'd be anywhere. A few nervous chuckles from the press pit. You've asked several questions, all of them. Interesting. So let's deconstruct them. One by one. She held up a finger. First, am I a fraud? Am I a glorified waitress? She smiled, a cold, bright smile that didn't touch her eyes. I was a waitress. I'm very proud of that job. It's hard work. It requires patience, multitasking, and a very good memory. All skills you seem to be lacking. The audience tittered. But I am also Dr. Elena Hayes, she continued, her voice hardening. MIT, PhD, computational linguistics. You would know that, Alistair, if you had ever, for 1 second, bothered to read the lawsuit I filed against your supplier, David Robitaille, for stealing my Odyssey platform. The very platform you rebranded as Juggernaut and tried to sell to Mr. Tanaka for $3 billion. She clicked a button on the remote in her hand. The screen behind her, which had shown the Project Camilla logo, now showed a side-by-side comparison of 2 blocks of code. One was highlighted in green, one in red. This, she said, pointing to the red, is your Juggernaut code, and this, pointing to the green, is my Odyssey code, time-stamped 2 years earlier. And if you'll direct your attention to line 40,182, she zoomed in. There, hidden in the source, was a line of ASCII text. It spelled out, EH was here. And she told you this wouldn't work. The auditorium exploded in sound, gasps, laughter, and the frantic clicking of cameras. So, no, Alistair, Evelyn said, turning back to him. I'm not a fraud. You are. I'm not a thief. You are. She held up a second finger. Second, did I seduce my way to the top? Did I lie?" She looked at him with profound pity. "You still don't get it, do you? After all this time, you still think the only way a woman can be more powerful than you is by using her body. You're not just a criminal, Alistair. You're a cliché." "I didn't have to lie," she said, her voice dropping. "I just had to tell the truth. You did the rest. You didn't lose your company because of me, Alistair. You lost it because you built an empire on a rotten foundation. You lost it because you lied to your partners, you lied to your shareholders, and you lied to yourself. You lost it because you were so blinded by your own arrogance, you couldn't see the genius holding the water pitcher." Vance was crumbling. He had no response. He just stood there, exposed, the entire world watching him. "You ruined me," he whispered, a pathetic, broken sound. Evelyn's face softened, but her eyes remained like steel. "No, Alistair, I didn't. You ruined yourself. I just handed you the bill." The Q&A was over. The MC, pale, stepped forward. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes." But Evelyn wasn't finished. She held up a hand. "One moment." The crowd watched, mesmerized, as she stepped down from the stage. Security tensed, but she walked past them. The reporters parted like the Red Sea. She walked directly up to Alistair Vance, who flinched, as if expecting her to hit him. She stopped, inches from him. She was the picture of power. He was a collapsed star. "You taught me something that night, Alistair," she said, her voice so quiet only he and the nearest microphones could hear. "Something I never learned at MIT. You taught me the value of being underestimated. It's the ultimate tactical advantage." She reached into the pocket of her Armani suit. The room held its breath. She pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. A single, crisp $1 bill. What's this?" he stammered, his eyes wide, confused. Evelyn unfolded it. She didn't hand it to him. She reached forward, and with 2 steady fingers, tucked the dollar bill into the breast pocket of his cheap, wrinkled blazer. She patted it twice, a gesture one might use on a disobedient child. "It's your tip," Evelyn Hayes said, "for the most valuable business lesson I ever learned. Never, ever, call the waitress stupid. We hear everything, and we have very good memories." She turned, her back straight, and walked away. The cameras did not follow her. They stayed on Alistair Vance, a man alone in a crowd, his hand trembling as he pulled the single dollar bill from his pocket. It was the precise, devastating, and final valuation of his entire life. Evelyn walked back to the front row, where Mr. Tanaka was standing. He didn't applaud. He didn't congratulate her. He simply bowed, a deep, respectful gesture. "Dr. Hayes," he said, "shall we go? We have work to do." "Yes, sir," Evelyn said, a small, genuine smile finally touching her lips. "We do." They walked out of the auditorium together, leaving the circus behind, leaving Alistair Vance to drown in the flashbulbs. And just like that, the empire was gone, and a new one was just beginning. Alistair Vance learned the hard way that the people you ignore are the ones who hold all the cards. Evelyn Hayes wasn't just a waitress. She was a genius in hiding. And one word, stupid, was all it took to unleash her. It just goes to show, you never know who you're talking to. The person pouring your coffee, the cleaner in your office, the waitress serving your table. They might just be the one person you can't afford to make an enemy of. Karma, as they say, is a patient waitress. What did you think of Evelyn's ultimate revenge? Was pressing that single dollar into his hand the perfect ending, or did you want to see Alistair in jail? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, please don't be stupid. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend, who loves a good karma story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another drama. Thanks for watching.